The sun peeked through the curtains of the cozy little apartment as Barnaby made food for his daughter, Florence. The aroma of fried eggs and bacon drifted from the small kitchen as Florence, a lively 11-year-old, was sitting at the dining table doing her schoolwork. Barnaby had brought up Florence by himself ever since his wife Beatrice died from heart problems 3 years prior. Every moment together was important. "Dad, could we maybe get a kitten?" Florence said, chewing on her toast, her eyes shining with hope as they met his. "Lucy and Millie both have kitties, and I promise to look after it. I'll feed it, clean it, all of it." Barnaby stopped for a second, thinking about what she had asked. Their tiny place was not the best for an animal, and his job at the factory barely paid the bills. Seeing how much she wanted it, he started to give in. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe we can go to the cat place this weekend and take a look around." Florence's face glowed as she gave him a big hug. After they finished eating, Barnaby drove Florence to Oakhaven Elementary, telling her to be good in school and learn a lot. "I'll get you at 3:30, he told her, kissing her head. "Stay with your friends and don't go off by yourself." Barnaby worked all day at a factory on the other side of town, running big machines and helping make new car parts. It was hard work, but he liked making something new. As the afternoon got darker, he saw the weather say it would rain really hard, so he sent Florence a message. "Big storm coming. Go straight home after school and wait for me." Florence got the message while she was with her friends, Lucy and Millie, on the school grounds. They had been playing for a while, and it was already past 4. "I need to go," Florence said, showing them the message. "My dad's worried about the rain." Her friends went with her to the bus stop, talking about what they'd do on the weekend. "See you Monday," Lucy said, as Florence got on the bus. The trip home usually took about 20 minutes, and Florence liked to look at the city from the window. She felt older riding alone, even though Barnaby had just started letting her do it. When Florence got off the bus, the rain started. She walked faster, putting her hood up as the light rain turned into a big storm. The roads were almost empty, since most people were inside. Florence hurried on the street she always took, her shoes making sounds on the wet ground. At the same time, Barnaby was done with his shift and headed home, thinking Florence was safe in their apartment. When he unlocked the door and heard nothing, he felt worried. "Florence," he called, looking in her room, then the bathroom, and then every place in their small home. Her school bag wasn't by the door, and her shoes were not where they should be. Getting more worried, Barnaby called Florence's phone, but it went right to voicemail. He called Lucy's mother, who told him they had left Florence at the bus stop a couple of hours before. Barnaby felt panicked and got his keys, driving fast to the bus stop, calling Florence's name and asking people if they had seen a young girl with brown hair and a red coat. The rain kept coming down as Barnaby looked all night. He called the police and told them she was missing, but they said to wait until morning since she had only been gone for a few hours. Barnaby couldn't sleep, and he spent all night walking the roads and calling hospitals. The next morning, there was terrible news. A man walking his dog had seen something in the Oakhaven River that goes through the park. Investigator George Clancy and his partner, Officer Lewis, went to look. As they got near the water, Clancy felt bad. The small body in a plastic bag was a child. "Call the person who checks dead bodies," Clancy said to Lewis, "and see if anyone has said a kid is missing." Clancy thought the body had been in the water for a day and a half, and because it was hidden, it looked like someone had done something bad. When Barnaby got the call from Investigator Clancy, he felt like his world was ending. At the place where they keep dead bodies, he knew it was Florence by her face and her clothes. The happy girl who had hugged him goodbye was now cold and still on a metal table. Clancy gently asked Barnaby about Florence's friends, if anyone didn't like her or if she had been acting strange, but Barnaby just shook his head. The person who checked dead bodies found something terrible that Clancy didn't tell the sad father. Florence had been hurt badly by some people before she was killed. There were things that showed at least 3 people did it, and it was very violent, so it didn't look like just a random thing. Back at the police station, Clancy and Lewis watched the videos from the bus stop and the area around it. They saw Florence getting off the bus, and then she was gone. They also saw a strange black truck parked near the bus stop when Florence would have been walking home. When they made the video clearer, they could see the truck's license plate and part of the driver's face. The truck was owned by Arthur Finch, a 40-year-old man who lived near the old train station. When the police went to Finch's house, he was in his yard, washing the inside of the truck very hard. "Is this your truck, Mr. Finch?" Clancy asked, walking up slowly. Arthur looked scared, and his hands were shaking. "Yes, but my son Derek uses it sometimes. He's 19 and lives here with me." As Clancy looked at the truck, he saw something shiny stuck between the seats. It was Florence's phone, and when Arthur saw Clancy find it, he turned white. "I don't know how that got there," he said. The police took Arthur in to ask him questions, but he said he was at work when Florence disappeared. Someone said he was at work, but Florence's phone being in his truck was a big problem. Arthur finally said that his son, Derek, had used the truck that night. Derek Finch was a young man who had done some small crimes and used drugs. When the police went to his friend's house where he was staying, he was very scared. 2 of his friends, Graham Bell and Keith Jones, were there too, and they all looked like they had used drugs recently. When they asked them questions, they slowly told the truth. Derek, Graham, and Keith had been driving around in the truck when they saw Florence walking alone in the rain. Because they were drunk, they decided to go talk to her. They grabbed Florence and drove her to Keith's house while his parents were away. What happened next was too terrible for Clancy to tell Barnaby. The 3 young men had hurt Florence for hours, recording what they did on Keith's phone. When they knew how bad what they did was, they got scared and killed Florence, so she couldn't tell anyone. They put her body in a plastic bag and left it in the river when it was dark. Barnaby felt sad and guilty. He thought it was his fault for not picking Florence up from school, for letting her ride the bus alone, and for every choice that led to this. He started riding the same bus Florence had taken, going over her last trip and thinking about what he could have done differently. One day, Barnaby was on the bus and heard a news story on the TV about Florence's body being found. The reporter said the police were looking at some people and that it might be like other crimes in the area. That night, Barnaby got a text message from Florence's phone. He felt his heart beat fast as he read, "Graham Bell and Keith Jones killed your daughter. Graham lives at 22 Oak Street. Derek Finch was there too, but they caught him. I'm sorry." The message was from Derek, who had taken Florence's phone from the police station when everyone was confused. He felt bad and was scared of his friends, so he told Florence's father who the other people were. Barnaby looked at the message for a long time, and his sadness turned into anger. He called the number for Graham Bell, but no one answered. He needed to know what happened and get justice, so he went to the address in the message. Graham Bell lived in an old house in the suburbs with his mother, who worked at a restaurant at night. When Barnaby got there, the house was dark except for a light in the basement. The front door was open, so he went in quietly, feeling scared and angry. In the basement, Barnaby saw Graham sitting at a computer, watching the video of what happened to Florence. The young man didn't seem to care at all, and he was even laughing. Barnaby was horrified and angry as Graham watched his daughter being hurt. Barnaby couldn't hold his anger anymore, and he stepped into the light. "That's my daughter," he said quietly, his voice shaking. Graham turned around, surprised. He was smaller than Barnaby thought, probably about 17, with messy hair and pimples. "Who are you?" Graham asked, trying to close the computer. "I'm Florence's father," Barnaby said, walking closer. "The girl you killed." Graham wasn't scared anymore. "You can't prove anything," he said. "I'm young. Even if they catch me, I'll be out in a few years." Barnaby jumped forward and pushed Graham to the ground. They fought hard, knocking things over. Graham was younger and faster, but Barnaby was strong because he was sad and angry. Barnaby grabbed a metal bar from a project Graham had been working on and hit him with it, killing him right away. Barnaby was breathing hard as he stood over Graham's body, feeling happy and terrible at the same time. He took pictures of what happened with his phone and then looked at Graham's computer. He found more videos that made him sick. Graham had hurt at least 2 other young girls, so it looked like he did this often. Barnaby cleaned up so no one would know he was there and then used Graham's phone to send a message to Keith Jones. "Going out of town to get a car. Meet me at my house tomorrow at midnight. Come alone." Investigator Clancy came to Graham's house the next morning after Graham's mother called. She had found her son's body in the basement and was very upset. Clancy saw how violent it was and started collecting things to use as proof. When Clancy looked at Graham's computer, he found the awful videos of Florence and other girls. The videos showed what happened and that other people were involved. Clancy also found things that said Barnaby had been there, like his fingerprints and DNA. They tried to call Barnaby, but he didn't answer, and when they looked at his apartment, they found clothes with blood on them in the laundry. They said Barnaby was a suspect, but he was gone. Keith Jones was arrested at his house, where his rich parents hired lawyers and planned how to defend him. They said Keith was just a confused teenager who had been led by older, bad people. The parents cared more about their name than what their son had done. At the police station, Clancy met the parents of one of Graham's other victims, a 15-year-old girl named Alice, who had killed herself after the people who hurt her threatened her. Alice's father, Peter, was sad and angry that the police hadn't helped his daughter. "These boys ruined my little girl," Peter said, crying. "They filmed what they did and said they'd put it online if she told anyone. She couldn't live with the shame." Clancy felt bad about these cases because he knew the law didn't always punish people enough for these terrible crimes. He had seen young people get small punishments and then go back to doing bad things. Barnaby had gone to a cabin he had rented a few months before to get away with Florence. The cabin was in the mountains, far from the city, so it was hard to find. He spent his days looking at the things he had found and planning what to do about Keith Jones. Barnaby was helped by a woman named Clara, who lived near the cabin and had seen him on the news. She didn't tell the police about him, but decided to help him after she heard about Florence's death. Clara had lost her own daughter to a drunk driver years before and knew how Barnaby felt. "I know what you're going through," she said, as she gave him food and things he needed. "The law didn't help my daughter either. The man who killed her was in prison for 2 years and then was out after a year and a half." Clara helped Barnaby plan how to find Keith, using her knowledge of the area and knowing people who didn't like the police. She also gave him a gun that she said had belonged to her husband. Investigator Clancy had found out that Barnaby had gone to Graham's house and talked to the mechanic who had been hurt. The man told Clancy how Barnaby had acted, and Clancy knew that the sad father was getting dangerous and might do something bad. Clancy also learned that Keith Jones had been hiding in the warehouse area, and he and other police officers went to look for him. They found things that showed Keith had been in some of the buildings, like places where he had slept and things he had stolen. Barnaby found Keith at a hotel near the edge of town, where the young man was with a girl who looked even younger than Florence. When Barnaby saw them together, he got very angry. He waited in the hotel parking lot until Keith came out alone and then went up to him. Keith was rude and didn't seem sorry for what he had done. "Your daughter was asking for it," he said. "She wanted us to teach her a lesson." Barnaby hit Keith, and they fought in the parking lot. Keith was strong and mean, but Barnaby was angry and sad. When Keith tried to run away on his motorcycle, Barnaby shot the front tire and Keith crashed. Investigator Clancy got to the hotel as Keith was trying to run into the woods. Clancy chased both men, calling for help as they ran through trees and bushes. "Stop, Barnaby!" Clancy yelled. "This won't bring Florence back." Barnaby stopped and turned to face the investigator. "They ruined my daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "They filmed it, they laughed about it, and they would have gotten away with it. The law helps them because they're young, but what about my child?" Clancy knew how Barnaby felt, but couldn't let him do something bad. "I know the law isn't perfect," he said, "but this isn't the answer. Let us handle Keith. Let the courts decide." "The courts?" Barnaby laughed. "They'll give him a few years in a young person's prison, maybe community service. He'll be free before Florence would have finished high school." Keith had been listening behind a tree. He jumped out and tried to grab Barnaby, hoping to get the gun. When they fought, the gun went off and hit Keith in the chest. Clancy took out his gun and shot Barnaby in the shoulder, making him drop the gun. Both men fell to the ground, Keith badly hurt and Barnaby hurt, but still alive. As the sirens got closer, Clancy knelt next to Barnaby, who was bleeding but awake. "I'm sorry about Florence," Clancy said. "I really am. She deserved better." Barnaby looked at the investigator, his eyes full of tears and sadness. "I just wanted them to pay for what they did to her. I wanted them to feel as bad as she did." Keith Jones died at the hotel from the gunshot. Derek Finch was found guilty of taking Florence, hurting her and killing her, and was sentenced to 25 years. Barnaby was found guilty of killing 2 people and was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of getting out. A year later, investigator Clancy visited Barnaby in prison. The sad father looked much older. His hair was now grey, and his face showed how much he had been through. They sat in the visiting room, talking about Florence and the case that had changed their lives. "I think about her every day," Barnaby said quietly. "I dream about her, about the life she should have had. College, a job, maybe kids of her own someday." Clancy nodded, knowing how much Barnaby had lost. "I have a daughter too," he said. "She's about Florence's age. I can't imagine what you went through." "The worst thing is knowing that I failed her," Barnaby said. "I was supposed to protect her and I didn't. Then I failed her again by becoming a killer." Clancy looked at the man and saw not a bad person, but a father who had been ruined by sadness and the fact that justice had not been done. "You did what you thought was right," he said. "I can't say it was okay, but I understand." As Clancy left the prison, he thought about the case that had changed how he felt about justice and revenge. Florence's death had caused many bad things to happen and made people wonder if the law was good enough at protecting people. The warehouse area where Keith had been hiding was torn down and made into a park. A small sign near the entrance was for Florence and other people who had been hurt by violent crimes, to remind people of the cost of such bad things. Barnaby spent the rest of his life in prison, never asking to get out or trying to appeal. He helped other prisoners understand what happens when people use violence and how important it is to find peaceful ways to solve problems. His story showed how bad revenge can be and how the law needs to be better. Investigator Clancy kept working as a police officer, using what he had learned from Florence's case in every investigation. He helped people who had been hurt by crimes and tried to make things better for young people who did bad things, hoping to stop bad things from happening in the future. People remembered Florence, a happy girl who had been taken too soon by the bad things people do. Her death made people change the laws about young people and protect people who had been hurt by crimes, so her life would mean something good instead of just being a sad story. In the end, the violence had hurt many people, leaving a community that would never forget the small girl's last trip home in the rain. Character count 21728.